In a quiet corner of Oregon where the pine trees whisper through winter winds, he walks. They call him a stray, just another dog without a home. But every step Bailey takes is toward a memory, a voice that once called him good boy. For 3 years he's followed the scent of belonging, walking behind strangers, and their dogs hoping, just hoping, one of them might turn around. But this isn't just a story about loss. It's about the day someone finally did. Chapter 1. One Winter Dog. It was mid-January in Forest Grove, Oregon, a small, quiet town nestled in the shadow of the Coast Range. The air carried the sharp bite of winter, crisp and dry, with snow blanketing the lawns and roofs of modest, weather-worn houses. A pale morning sun filtered through the overcast sky, casting a muted light across the sleeping streets. Most people stayed indoors, bundled up and warm, but one figure moved steadily along the sidewalk, a silent presence against the hum of suburbia. Bailey, a 7-year-old golden retriever, walked with a slow, deliberate gait. His thick golden coat had dulled from years in the cold, and small patches of fur were thinned from age and hardship. His eyes, once bright and eager, now carried the weight of memory, soft, searching, and tired. Bailey wasn't thin, but he had the frame of a dog who missed regular meals. His left hind leg carried a slight limp, the result of a car brushing too close the previous year. Despite the limp, he moved with quiet determination, as if every day were a mission he couldn't explain to anyone but himself. Bailey once belonged to Henry Collins, a retired Vietnam veteran who had lived alone in a modest blue house at the corner of Maple and 6th. Henry was tall and lean, with a shock of silver hair and a voice that rasped like sandpaper. He spoke little, but treated Bailey with a gentle firmness. They shared a quiet life, walks in the park, evenings on the porch, and quiet mornings listening to the radio. Henry passed away in his sleep 2 winters ago, and Bailey had been on his own since. The house was boarded up now, a faded foreclosure notice pinned crookedly to the front door. Most days, Bailey circled the neighborhood, often following behind people walking their dogs. He never got too close, never barked or begged, just followed. Some people noticed, some didn't. Kids called him Ghost Dog and tossed him bits of jerky. Adults felt a pang of pity, but figured animal control would pick him up eventually. But Bailey never strayed far. Each day ended the same. He returned to the steps of Henry's house, curled up beside the porch railing, and stared at the door until sleep took him. On this particular morning, Bailey paused at the corner of Maple Street, nose lifted to the air. Snowflakes had started to fall again, soft and slow. He spotted a woman across the street, walking briskly with a German shepherd at her side. Bailey hesitated, ears perking slightly. The woman was Megan Lewis, 32, petite and fair-skinned, with a mane of auburn hair tucked under a navy beanie. She had an athletic build, the kind carved from years of running marathons and doing yoga at dawn. Her gaze was direct, often unreadable, shaped by the sudden loss of her younger brother in a wildfire 2 years ago, a wound she carried in silence. Megan worked remotely as a graphic designer and had recently moved to Forest Grove with her husband Luke, hoping small-town quiet would help mend things. Rex, her 5-year-old German shepherd, was a towering, broad-chested dog with a black and tan coat and amber eyes. Once trained as a search and rescue canine, Rex had retired early after an incident during a forest rescue mission left him shaken and sensitive to loud noises. He still bore the instinct to protect, and his loyalty to Megan was absolute. Bailey started to follow from a distance, head-low paws crunching softly in the snow. Megan noticed first, not Bailey, but the way Rex had stopped and turned tail straight, ears rigid. She glanced behind and saw the golden figure. "He's back again," Megan murmured, slowing her pace. She had seen Bailey a few times before, but had never managed to get close. Every time she approached, he would slip away, vanishing like fog into alleyways or behind hedges. But something in her, some echo of loss, some lingering need to protect, made her reach into her coat pocket and pull out a granola bar. She broke a piece off and laid it on the sidewalk. Rex watched, not moving. His tail gave a slight flick. Megan straightened and walked on. Bailey waited until she was nearly a block away before padding forward. He sniffed the granola, nudged it with his nose, then gently took it into his mouth. That night, Megan stood at her front window, lights dimmed, watching the snow. She didn't see Bailey again, but she left out an old towel and a bowl of dry food near the edge of the porch, just in case. And so, without speaking, 2 lives, one grieving, one wandering, took their first step toward something neither could yet name. Chapter 2. Echoes and Strangers. A week had passed since Megan first left food and an old towel on her porch. It had snowed twice more, leaving the sidewalks half buried and the trees wearing thick white coats. The days remained gray, muffled by clouds, and nights brought a cold that turned breath into fog. Forest Grove moved at its usual unhurried pace, the town quiet under its blanket of winter. But Megan's thoughts moved differently now, always circling back to the golden figure with the weary eyes. Rex had taken to pausing every time they walked past the end of their block, sniffing the air with purpose. Once or twice, Megan caught sight of fresh paw prints near the edge of her property, always singular, always disappearing into the woods behind the houses. Bailey was still out there, still watching, still alone. On a Wednesday morning, Megan stopped by a local cafe for her usual coffee. The place was small with mismatched chairs and a smell of cinnamon and old books. Behind the counter stood Sarah Jennings, a woman in her mid-40s with short blonde curls and a voice like honey steeped in whiskey. She was tall and wiry, her movements brisk and efficient. Sarah had lived in Forest Grove her whole life, and everyone who came in knew her name. She was kind but guarded, shaped by a decade of caring for her chronically ill mother, until the woman passed away the year before. "You look distracted," Sarah said as she handed Megan her drink. Megan hesitated, then said, "There's this dog, golden retriever. Keeps following me. Looks like he's lost." Sarah nodded slowly. "Ghost dog. Been around a couple years. Used to belong to old Henry Collins. Nobody ever caught him. Poor thing won't let anyone close. He's been eating the food I leave out." Sarah gave her a long look. "If he's chosen you, that's something." Later that afternoon, Megan and Luke sat on their couch, a fire crackling in the hearth. Luke, 35, broad-shouldered, with a salt and pepper beard and thoughtful eyes, had the steady calm of someone who had seen the worst and survived it. He worked as a part-time firefighter and spent the rest of his days restoring vintage furniture in their garage. Megan told him about Bailey in more detail that evening. "He follows us some mornings," she said. "I left food, he's eating it." Luke nodded slowly. "If he's been on the street this long, he knows how to keep his distance." but if he's not running, maybe he wants to stay. They decided to try something different. The next morning, Megan took Rex out earlier than usual. She carried a second leash and a fresh bowl of turkey and rice. They walked slowly, taking the long way around the block. Bailey appeared behind them near the corner. This time he didn't stop when Megan turned. He kept walking cautiously, eyes flicking between her and Rex. She spoke softly, kneeling down. "You hungry boy?" She placed the bowl on the sidewalk and backed away. Bailey approached slowly, nose twitching, tail low. He began to eat. Megan reached into her coat pocket, producing a soft nylon leash. When he finished, she extended her hand, not to touch him, just open and waiting. Bailey sniffed the air, then stepped back, unsure. Megan didn't press him. Instead, she waited, sitting on the curb until the cold bit into her thighs. After several minutes, Bailey lay down a few feet away. Not close enough to touch, but not far. Rex sat quietly beside Megan, his posture relaxed, no longer tense. A few days later, the town vet, Dr. Anika Patel, stepped into the picture. Short, energetic, with long black hair tied in a braid, she ran the local animal clinic. Originally from Chicago, Anika had moved west for a quieter life after burning out in a high-stress urban hospital. She met Megan during a donation drive and had given her advice about dealing with traumatized animals. "I'll lend you a mobile crate," Anika said. "But don't rush him. If he's coming close, he's making the decision. That's the only way it sticks." That same afternoon, Megan placed the crate near the porch. Not to trap Bailey, but to let him explore. She filled it with soft blankets and left the door open. Snow fell quietly around it. Bailey came that night. Megan didn't see him, but when she checked in the morning, the food was gone, and the crate had a golden tuft of fur caught on the blanket. Elsewhere, a boy named Caleb, 8 years old and new to the neighborhood, had started noticing Bailey too. Caleb was small for his age, with shaggy dark hair and an ever-present red hoodie. His family had just moved from Portland after a rough divorce. Caleb spent most of his time riding his bike alone. He began leaving bits of jerky and drawing pictures of Bailey in a notebook, calling him Captain Gold. He hadn't spoken much since the move, but something about Bailey made him feel seen. By the end of the week, Megan came home to find Bailey lying inside the crate. Not sleeping, just there quietly watching the street tail gently thudding when she approached. She didn't try to leash him. Not yet. But she sat with him for a long time as the sky dimmed, her coffee growing cold in her hands. For the first time in months, she didn't think about the fire. She thought about staying. Chapter 3. The Quiet Between. The snow had stopped falling, and for the first time in weeks, the skies cleared. The pale winter sun painted Forest Grove in soft gold, and a rare stillness lingered in the air. Megan opened her front door and stepped onto the porch with a steaming mug of tea wrapped in a thick cable-knit sweater. She paused, surprised, but not startled to see Bailey still in the crate, awake and watching the yard like a silent sentinel. She sat beside the crate, close but not touching, and began to speak softly about nothing in particular. Just sounds. Just company. Rex lay beside her, occasionally glancing at Bailey, then returning to his half-doze. As the town thawed, so too did the routines of its people. Word had started to spread quietly, as it does in small towns, that the ghost dog might finally have a home. At the corner grocery store, an elderly man named Walter, stoop-shouldered with a wool cap pulled down over his ears. mentioned to Sarah at the cafe that he saw Bailey following a red-haired woman in the mornings. "She's gentle," Walter said. "Got that kind of calm that dogs notice." Sarah smiled, not unkindly. She had once hoped to adopt a dog herself, but after her mother's passing, she found herself exhausted by care. Still, something about Bailey's story softened her. She began leaving out bits of leftover chicken on her back step. Across town, Caleb began drawing more. He now kept a small sketchbook filled with images of Bailey in different poses, sitting running, looking up with hopeful eyes. His mother Rachel noticed the change. A single mother in her early 40s, Rachel had short, dark hair always tied back, and hands that bore the calluses of years working as a hospital nurse. She had grown guarded since the divorce, but was quietly grateful for anything that brought Caleb out of his shell. "You like that dog, huh?" she asked one evening. Caleb nodded without looking up. "He's not scared like me. He's just waiting. That's brave." Meanwhile, Megan started documenting Bailey's visits. She kept a journal by the window and noted the times he arrived, the food he preferred, the way his ears twitched when someone slammed a car door. Luke installed a small camera outside to track Bailey's behavior at night. The footage revealed something unexpected on 2 separate nights. Bailey had left the crate briefly, only to return with an old tattered plush rabbit in his mouth. It had once been Henry's gift to him, a toy from years ago, faded, but cherished. Megan placed the rabbit inside the crate. Later that week, Dr. Anika Patel stopped by with a portable heater to keep the crate warm. She also brought along her assistant, James, a lanky veterinary student with sharp cheekbones and an endless supply of dog treats in his backpack. James had a quiet way about him born from growing up in foster care and had an uncanny instinct with animals. Bailey didn't growl when James approached, only watched him with mild curiosity. "Give it time," James said, squatting nearby. "He's almost there. He just needs the final thread of trust." The breakthrough came during a windstorm 3 days later. A cold front swept down from the north, rattling tree branches and knocking out power to a few homes in the neighborhood. That night the wind howled like a freight train, and the crate shuddered under its cover. Megan rushed outside in her pajamas, flashlight in hand, only to find the crate empty. Panic flared. She searched the yard, called softly, shone the light along the tree line, but Bailey was gone. She didn't sleep that night. At sunrise, Megan opened the front door to find Bailey curled up beside it, soaked and shivering with the plush rabbit pressed against his chest. She dropped to her knees, and for the first time, Bailey didn't move away. He leaned into her. She wrapped her arms around him without a word, tears slipping down her cheeks. Later that morning, Rex came over slowly, tail wagging, and sniffed Bailey from head to tail. The 2 dogs stood there face to face. Then Bailey licked Rex's muzzle once. A simple gesture. Acceptance. That afternoon, Luke, Megan, and Anika gathered to examine Bailey more thoroughly. His heart was irregular. Anika suspected possible cardiac issues, something that explained his periodic coughing and fatigue. They agreed to bring him in for a full scan, but for now, Bailey would stay inside. Megan prepared a soft bed near the fireplace. Bailey lay down slowly, his body stiff, but his tail thumped once against the rug. Rex settled beside him like an old friend. That night, Caleb rode his bike by and saw Bailey through the window. He raised a hand, and the dog, as if sensing the motion, looked back. Chapter 4. The wait beneath Bailey's first few nights inside the Lewis home were quiet and careful. He slept near the fireplace, occasionally lifting his head when wind rustled the windows, but never strayed far from his blanket. The warmth suited him, though his body still carried stiffness, and he coughed in his sleep. Megan kept a soft light on overnight, leaving the hallway door slightly ajar. It was her habit, one she'd picked up after her brother's accident, never fully comfortable in total darkness anymore. Rex adjusted faster than anyone expected. The German shepherd kept a respectful distance, never challenging Bailey but often choosing to lie nearby. The two dogs rarely interacted directly, but their companionship was visible in the small ways, the synchronized glances, the way they turned their heads toward the same sound, the slow rhythm of trust. On Friday, Megan and Luke brought Bailey to the local veterinary clinic for his full scan. Anika greeted them with a clipboard in hand, her braid looped into a bun today. The clinic smelled faintly of lavender and antiseptic, and the waiting room was decorated with children's drawings of pets taped to the walls. Bailey walked in slowly, unsure, but didn't resist. The scan revealed moderate pericardial effusion fluid around Bailey's heart. It wasn't yet life-threatening, but it explained his coughing fatigue and occasional disorientation. Anika suggested medication and light activity with follow-ups every few weeks. Megan took the news with practiced calm, but her fingers clenched slightly around the paper instructions. They picked up the medication from a small independent pharmacy on the edge of town run by a bespectacled man named Nolan Grant. Nolan was in his early 50s, always wearing plaid shirts and suspenders. He had a quiet, dry wit and a knack for remembering everyone's name, a skill sharpened from years of military logistics work before he settled into this slower life. "I saw that dog by the train station 2 winters ago," Nolan said as he handed Megan the bag. "Didn't think he'd last another season. Looks like he finally figured out where he belongs." That night, while Bailey rested, Megan looked over the plush rabbit and decided to wash it. As she waited for it to dry, she pulled out an old photo album from Henry's box, something a neighbor had given her after the house was cleared. Inside were faded photos of Henry with Bailey as a puppy hiking through the forest sitting at a lake. One photo showed Bailey curled at Henry's feet during a snowy afternoon almost identical to how he now curled near her own. Meanwhile, Caleb, ever observant, had started creating a short comic in his sketchbook. It was titled Captain Gold and the Brave Shepherd. The story featured Bailey and Rex as canine superheroes saving a small town from shadows. In Caleb's imagination, they had powers. Bailey could calm storms, and Rex had the ability to track lost souls. He showed it to his mom, Rachel, one evening. She smiled, her tired eyes softening. "You think they'd let us visit him sometime?" Caleb asked. Rachel paused, then nodded. "Maybe next week. Let me talk to Miss Megan." Elsewhere, Sarah from the cafe had taken a deeper interest, too. She found herself pausing by her kitchen window more often, wondering if Bailey might ever wander past her fence again. Her neighbor, a retired school teacher named Evelyn, noticed. "That dog's touched you," Evelyn said one morning. Sarah exhaled slowly. "Maybe I just want something to need me that won't die on me too soon." That weekend, Megan invited James to visit and observe Bailey's behavior. James brought along a small blue rubber toy shaped like a rabbit as a backup comfort item. Bailey sniffed it, then gently laid his chin over it like it was a gift he wasn't sure he deserved. James knelt beside him. You ever notice how some dogs just carry things not for fun? but because if they drop it, it means they're letting go. Megan nodded. Over the next few days, Megan slowly introduced Bailey to routines, feeding times, short walks, even bath time. She discovered he liked warm water but hated the sound of the blow dryer. He tolerated it only when Megan hummed softly, something her mother used to do while brushing her hair as a child. One evening, while Rex and Bailey lounged near the fire, Luke played a slow melody on his guitar. It was something quiet, almost mournful. Bailey shifted closer, resting his head on Megan's foot. It was the first time he'd initiated contact. Luke looked up. "He's staying, Meg. You know that, right?" She nodded, eyes glassy. "I hope he knows that too." Chapter 5. The House with Two Hearts. March arrived with the promise of thaw. Snow still lingered in the shaded corners of Forest Grove, but crocuses had begun poking through the softening soil. The town felt as though it were waking from a long sleep, shaking off the silence of winter. At the Lewis home, windows opened a crack to let in the breeze and the scent of warming earth, mixed with the faint aroma of Megan's cinnamon muffins. Bailey had taken to resting on the sun-warmed rug by the front window. His movements were still slow, and he tired easily, but the medication helped. He coughed less now, and sometimes even jogged a few steps when Rex barked at passing squirrels. His fur had regained some shine. The old plush rabbit never left his side. Megan was organizing the garage one Sunday morning when she found an old wooden sign half buried beneath paint cans. It read, "The House with Two Hearts." Luke had carved it during their first year of marriage as a joke about their home renovations and tendency to rescue broken furniture, and now it felt fitting again. She dusted it off and hung it above the front door. That afternoon they hosted a small gathering in the backyard, an informal celebration of spring and healing. Caleb and Rachel arrived first. Caleb clutching a manila folder with comic pages he wanted to show Bailey. Rex greeted them with his usual reserved tail wag. Bailey stood slowly and walked to Caleb, letting the boy kneel and show him the drawings. Rachel, wearing jeans and a soft pink cardigan, thanked Megan quietly. "You gave him something stable," Rachel said. "That's not easy to come by." Later, Sarah arrived with a pan of lemon bars and her neighbor, Evelyn. Sarah wore a green scarf and light makeup, a rare combination that earned her a teasing nudge from Evelyn. Sarah shrugged it off, but smiled more than usual. She knelt beside Bailey and offered her hand. He sniffed her fingers and licked them once. James came too, wearing a charcoal vest over his usual hoodie. He brought a new toy, a squeaky fox, and sat on the steps near Bailey, quietly observing. "He's more relaxed now," he said. Like the storm finally passed. Even Walter, the elderly man with the wool cap, wandered in for a bit. He leaned on his cane, eyes twinkling, and told Luke a story about how Henry once saved his cat from a rain gutter, with Bailey barking instructions from below. As the sun dipped, casting a golden glow across the yard, Luke brought out his guitar. Rex lay at his feet. Bailey curled beside Megan, head resting gently on her lap. The music was soft, something without lyrics, and no one spoke while it played. It was in that moment, quiet, warm, real, that something shifted. Bailey let out a soft sigh and closed his eyes, not from pain, not from fear, but from peace. In the weeks that followed, Bailey settled into his new rhythm. Megan took him on short walks in the morning while Luke worked on a bench project out front. Caleb stopped by after school once a week to update Bailey on the latest issue of Captain Gold. Sarah invited Megan to help her start a small herb garden behind the cafe. James asked if he could use Bailey in a paper he was writing about emotional recovery in animals. But perhaps the most surprising change came one morning when Rex placed his favorite chew rope beside Bailey and walked away. Megan found them both napping in a sunbeam side by side, two guardians finally at rest. Bailey wasn't young, and he wasn't the same dog Henry had raised, but he was home. In a house with two hearts, he had become the quiet beat between them. Life isn't always easy. There's loss, loneliness, and moments that leave us broken. But like Bailey sometimes, what we need isn't a miracle. It's patience, a door left open, and a little kindness at just the right moment. Bailey's journey wasn't just about a dog finding a home. It was a quiet reminder that every soul, animal, or human deserves a second chance and a place to belong. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a little hope today. And if you believe in compassion, healing, and the power of love, leave a comment below with the word Amen to say a small prayer for all the Baileys still out there. Feel free to share your thoughts or a story of loyalty and second chances you've experienced too. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that bring light into the world. May God bless everyone watching this. Amen.